Hey YouTube, Do-It-Yourself Junkie 369, and in this video I'm going to be giving you a close-up enlarged view of how to tie two different knock points for your bow using heavy-duty thread like this. Now I tied a knock point in my Top Archery recurve bow review, initial look and setup, but it was really hard to see what I was doing, and I watched some other videos of people tying knock points, and they're all doing it with the bow, trying to zoom in really close so you can see what's going on, and I wasn't really happy with how it looked. So my knock point stand-in is going to be this 1/4 inch rope, and then my bowstring is going to be a nice bright yellow broom handle. That way you can see up close what it takes to tie knock point. I'm going to be doing two different types. The first one is really easy to move when you're tuning your bow, and the second is kind of a permanent one for when you know absolutely for sure where your knock point is going to be and you're putting it there without the plan of ever needing to adjust it up and down the serving. Both work really well. As you saw in the Top Archery review, I used the adjustable one because I wasn't sure where I would need it. If I ever go back and retie it for any reason, or when I get a new bowstring, I'll probably tie the permanent one. That way I know for certain that my knock point hasn't moved on me while I'm shooting. Okay, so this represents the serving of your bow, and then this is going to be the thread that you're using for knock point. So you want to take your thread that you're using for your knock point and double it over. You want one end really long. That's going to be what you wrap your knock point with. The free end here, the working end, you want that laying along the string. And then you just hold that in place with your thumb. Leave a loop sticking out like this, and start making your wraps. And this free end here that you're wrapping over, that you doubled over, you want to make that probably twice as long as your planned knock point. And your knock point will probably take about 10 wraps. Basically, I try to make them about 1/4 inch long or longer. So that would be your 10 wraps, making sure that I'm still holding this loop. If I let go, it would just unwrap. Take your working end that you're working with down here, take that end and feed it back through this loop you left down here on the other end of your knock point. And then pull this end to close off the loop. And then take both ends and pull as hard as you can to lock in your knock point. At which point you will trim off, leaving about a 1/2 inch of thread at each end with a pair of scissors so that you're not likely to nick your serving. And then once that's trimmed, take a lighter, light the thread on fire, lick your thumb, and as it melts down, you just kind of quickly use your wet finger to smash that molten thread into the wraps of your knock point, locking that in. And once that's complete, to adjust it, you just spin the knock point to walk it up and down the serving to adjust where it's positioned. I'll show you how to do the scissors and lighter on the actual knock point tied to my bow at the end of this video, after I show you the other method for tying a knock point, the permanent method for tying a knock point. For the permanent method of tying a knock point, you need to know what an overhand knot is. Basically, an overhand knot is you create a loop like this, and then taking your working end, wrap that around the loop. So it looks like this, and that just gets tied over and over. So you will figure out where you want your knock point to be. So say this is the knock point I'm tying, and this is the bottom side of the knock point. It's in the correct direction. So you'll start at that end and then work up the string. So this is the bottom of the knock point. The arrow gets knocked right under it. So we'll start here and then work up the string. If I was putting a knock point under the arrow, this would be the top of the knock point where the arrow rests, and then we would tie down the string. But in this case, we're doing the top knock point and tying up the string. So you go to about the center of your nylon thread, and you create an overhand knot. And then just tighten it down and make sure you get it exactly where you want that knock point to be. Then you'll take the free ends, go to the other side, and tie another overhand knot. So basically you have an overhand knot here, a overhand knot here. And you just continue that up the string, alternating sides, tying an overhand knot on each side. And you'll want to mush all those knots together so that there aren't any gaps. And when you're tightening down your overhand knot, you do not want to pull too tight. If you pull too tight, it will pull the thread in between the wraps of the serving, and that's not good. You do not want it to split the serving apart. So you just want it tight enough. And basically hold the bottom piece where you want it and smush those down. Together so that they're tight and you don't see any serving through the thread. Once you have enough thread tied around for your knock point, you're satisfied with the length, go ahead and without switching sides, tie another overhand knot. Basically, you're creating a square knot here at the end to lock all of this in place and to keep the thread from being unraveled. Then you will take a pair of scissors and cut the thread, leaving about 1/2 inch free, and then take your lighter, burn it down until it's almost to the knot, wet thumb, and press that molten thread into the knot to lock everything in place. And on that note, for your knock point, you're probably going to want to use a nylon thread. That way, when you apply your lighter to it, it melts. Because you need a thread that melts. You need to be able to mush that molten portion of thread into the knock point. In case you don't know how to tie a square knot, usually I go right over left, the 2 free ends, and then take that right piece and wrap it around one time. That will create something that looks like this. Then I take left over right and wrap it around. Basically, you want the standing end and the free end to come out the same side of the loop. Over here, we have the standing end and the free end coming out the same end of the loop. And that is a square knot or a reef knot. If you mess it up, you get what's known as a granny knot. So let's say I go right over left around one time, and then instead of taking left over right, I go right over left again around one time, and now I have a granny knot. Notice that the standing end and the free end do not come through the loop on the same side. That's a very poor knot, and if I put enough pressure on it, it should just walk apart. Okay, here is a finished knock point. This is why I tied it on the broom handle with rope instead of thread. It's very hard to see, even close in. This is the adjustable one. I'll let you know if it ever unwraps. My experience, it's pretty solid and never will, but we'll see. So on this, you just want to take some scissors and trim about a 1/2 to 1/4 inch away from the knot. Like so. Before you do this next step, you want to wet your thumb or your finger, whatever you're going to snuff out this flame, and mash the molten nylon into the knock point. That way it's ready to go. You're going to take your lighter, and it should burn. And as soon as it gets down to that serving, just snuff it out like so, and kind of mash the molten nylon into the knock. There is a black spot on my finger. That's just some molten nylon. It rubs right off, and I did not feel anything, and you shouldn't either. So repeat it for the other side. Yep, it went out too early. And you may notice I am holding the bow with the free ends of the knot sticking up and using the flame here. If you're doing it under, the flame is going to travel upward and possibly ruin your bowstring. That's one very important note. There you have it. That's how you create a knock point for your bowstring. Hopefully you found this video helpful. Please give a thumbs up if you did. Think about sharing it. Think about subscribing, and thanks for watching.